This is kind of crucial for the babes who need steps. Go ahead and grab a picture. You're going to want this in your bathroom come Monday morning. We're going to start with our highlighter. If you opt to, you can also pop in Sugar Cakes or Sugar Crush in your highlight zones if you want some extra shimmer. This one does have a matte for a highlight. Brushes that you could use for this step, you could go oval compressed or you could go fluffy crease, both will work. And we want to frame out the highlight zones. So we're going to pat, press our highlighter underneath the brow, in the inner corner. And if you have a very, very shimmery highlighter for this move, I still want you grabbing vanilla from your contour palette to get this really top section, like where your brow ends on the inside. What I see sometimes, and it's a mistake in newer makeup artists, is that they use shimmer and they just go bam, and they trace up the side of their nose and then across like a big like L shape kind of. And then when they do the rest of their makeup, all this shimmer doesn't want to make friends with this part of their nose. It's kind of awkward. So always keep in mind you want either a vanilla or a matte highlighter right in this inner corner. Next move. Now this is also going to vary with your eye shape. So if you have a lower crease, we're going to make accommodations for that. And what I love is that Abby's crease is a little bit lower, so you get to see an example up on camera. Okay, we're going to go into our transition shade. Now, there's a couple different brushes you can use for this. You can either go in with your fluffy crease, which is this guy I've been using already, or if you need more precision and accuracy, like you have a smaller amount of space to work with and you feel like you lose definition because you have a tiny space, using a smaller brush is appropriate so that we don't overlap up onto like her highlight zone. So you could use one of two brushes for this move. You could either use your fluffy crease or your precision crease. They look like this. I'll pop them a little bit more side by side. If you have less space to work with, go with the smaller brush, which is the precision crease. And just a pro tip, I tend to keep on hand like 3 or 4 of these brushes. If you look in my makeup bag, I keep about 3 or 4 of these because I use them for all different colors and all different moves, and I get mad that I have to like wipe my brush off all the time. Nobody got time for that. And then also the fluffy crease, I usually keep about 3 of those on deck as well. So just a thought for you, if you are getting mad that you're having to wipe off your brush and clear it every time, just grab an extra. It doesn't hurt. They're not that expensive. So we're going to go in and lay in our transition shade. And you might also want to have on deck your micro buffer or your Color Wash Genius for blending, because we're going to place the transition and then we're going to blend the transition. I'm going to go in with a smaller brush at first, because you can always add more. So you can see where Abby's natural crease is, where the skin kind of folds together. She has a very defined crease. We do not want to go any lower than her crease, so I want to stay above it with this shade. With our eyes closed, I can still see exactly where that line is, and I'm going to go and pat, press, just above that crease. And I'm taking it about 2/3 of the way across the eye. If it helps you to start like at the outer edge, you totally can. Like if you want to start out here and bring it in, go 50%, maybe 70% the way across. So this is just placement. Place, meaning you're taking your eyeshadow and you're placing it on your primer. And then blend means you have a brush that has nothing on it. We call it the dry brush technique. So if you need to like wipe your brush off, make sure that there's no extra product on it. Your blending move means you have a clean brush and you're just blending. You're just color melting from that point. You'll hear me say place eyeshadow on primer. You'll hear me say blend. That means clean brush, and we're just doing that eraser motion or blending. I'm using the fluffy crease brush because I want control here. And I'm going back and forth doing that eraser motion. And my goal is where the transition was like a hard line, I want to meld and like marry the transition into the highlighter. We're going to do that back and forth motion, and it's literally light as a feather, like baby angel feathers. Yeah. Your goal here is that you don't want to remove your primer, you don't want to remove your highlighter, it's just melding your transition into your highlighter. Now, pro tip, look at the difference between placement versus placed and blended. It should be really, really nice and soft. It's called a transition color because we're gonna make the eyelid darker and transition up to the highlight. Here's the difference between 2018 makeup and 2003 makeup. Back in the day, they used to do like a rainbow when they blended. It was like a windshield wiper. You guys have probably seen that viral video with the lady going, "It's like a windshield wiper." Okay, it's not like a windshield wiper. It's 2019. So instead of doing that motion, it's back and forth, and you're climbing uphill, and you're connecting. If you need somewhere to aim, you're going to the corner of the brow. You're not coming down to the tear duct. It's an uphill life. You're going up, you're escalating. Okay, up, 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 not to the corner. When you place it, you're gonna go 50, maybe 70% of the way from the outer corner towards your inner corner of your eye. And if you are not the greatest at blending, I would say only apply your transition about halfway so that you have space to blend it if you deposit too much color. If you take your transition color all the way in and you start blending, it has nowhere to go except for into your highlight zone, and that's not where we want it. This is where it gets fun. You're looking for a brush that's wide and flat because we're going to be doing a stamping motion or like a pat press motion. Some people say pack press. They both work. I'm loading my brush. When I say I load my brush, it looks like this. I'm taking my oval compressed brush and I'm laying it on the surface and pulling across. It's like full of makeup. This is the side with none. This is the loaded side, and we are loading the intensifier. This is scary, but it's gonna turn out so good. If you have issues with shadow fall, you're just gonna tap your brush a little bit, make sure that it's not gonna end up like all over your cheek. But the reason that we're starting with eyes is so that if it ends up on your cheek, we can wipe it off. You got a makeup remover wipe, remember? You're gonna have your eyes open. It helps to pop your chin up a little bit and look downward into your mirror. Reason being, like on Abby, she's got a little bit of space right here, and this is a dry brush right now. She's got a little bit of space right here where her natural fold of her crease is. And she's already got primer that's settling because there's no powder on it to hold it in place yet. Before I ever pop anything on the lid, I'm gonna make sure and smooth out any creases in her primer. If you feel like you need to add primer at this point, you totally can. If your primer is kind of skippy or it disappeared, you want some really good primer. I'm going to add a little bit more primer so that I get max color deposit. And that's optional. You don't have to. That's just my own take on it. I want you to pay super close attention at this juncture. Don't do it until you watch it. Tap the excess of your intensifier off of your brush. And from here, I take my brush, and you can either invert it first, so it's the brush handles up towards the ceiling, or you can start it with the brush on the bottom, but at some point, you're going to be inverting your brush, and here's why. I want to cover the outer half of Abby's eyelid where there's visible primer. I want to pat press intensifier on there. So it looks like this. If you need to lift your brow, you totally can, which I'm going to do for her. My brush handle is towards the floor, and I'm doing a pat press, and I'm wiggling back and forth and letting go. Pat, press, wiggle back and forth, let go. So it really deposits wherever there's that wet primer, it's really going to deposit on there. And I just want to do the outer half of the eye. And it's okay if you overlap a little bit onto your transition. That's totally cool. Then I'm flipping my brush upside down because I want to get super duper close to her lash line. I'm doing the same move. So I'm pat pressing and I'm wiggling back and forth. Same move. So I'm pat pressing and I'm wiggling back and forth so that I get really, really down to the lashes. And that's just the outer half of the eye. Next move, I want you to take a clean brush. I like for this move, fluffy crease brush, because we've got to make that transition make friends before we add any more on top. As she's opening and closing her eyes, what I noticed was I wanted her intensifier to show up a little bit higher than her actual crease. So I did go higher than the crease. That's optional. But if your eye is open and you're like, I can't even see anything, you can add a little bit more of your intensifier. Before we move into popping in an accent for the lid, what I want to do is just soften everything out. We're taking a dry brush, and I like when I'm working on a client or myself. On myself, I just lift my eyebrows a little bit. Like I just raise them. On a client, I'll do this, just kind of give them a tiny little lift, and it's that back and forth motion like you're erasing. And your goal right now is you've got a stark line where the intensifier touches your transition. You want to soften that line out with a dry brush. So I'm just going back and forth where they kind of kiss, where they connect. Just soften it out so you have no hard edges anywhere. That is seriously the difference between a pro makeup artist and someone who's dabbling, is you have an ability to get rid of hard edges. In this inner corner, she still has wet primer all up in here. We're not trying to get rid of that. We're focused on doing the outer 50%. So it should look like this when you're done with that move. Awesome. Looks good. Right now you have one more hard edge. Where do you see a hard line? In the center. So where your transition is meeting the primer. I'm going to ask you to have the most self-control on the planet right now. We still need wet primer over here to pop some accent onto. Your goal is to take your dry brush, clear it, make sure there's no stuff on there. Your goal right now is that we just want to soften that hard line. So many times I watch clients and they just take their accent and they smash it onto that hard line, and the line will never go away. You could blend for 6 hours, it's there. We're going to take our brush, and the movement is going to go in this direction. So away from the nose, and I want you to stay out of the inner corner of the eye. Do not touch the tear duct with your brush. I want you to just go like this and gently feather away from your nose and towards your ear and soften that line up a little bit. It's not back and forth, it's just away from the nose and soften the line so you don't have a hard, harsh line. Last move, we're gonna pop an accent. So choose your accent color of choice. Stick with a smaller size brush, like Precision Crease would be great, Fluffy Crease would be great. And we're just gonna put this where there's still available primer, which is where, guys? That last little sliver that's left on the eyelid, right here. Stay out of the tear duct because that's your highlight zone. And you can totally overlap on top of your intensifier. It's like the inner, maybe third to half of your eye. And feel free to go over the intensifier. And notice I'm using my brush and I'm pulling away from the tear duct because we don't want to cover up our highlight. So again, planting my brush and pulling away from the tear duct and overlapping a little bit onto our intensifier. Awesome. We, my lovies, are wrapped for the top lid of Smokey Eye.